we go. Now, if I share my screen now, I should be able to, yeah. So you should be able to see stage 2 now on the screen. Can you see that?
Yep.
Great. Excuse me. Okay, so let's make it full screen so you've got a better chance of seeing. So what I'm going to cover in this session is stage 2. Now, stage 2 is about establishing a vision for the alliance relationship. Now, obviously, we're talking here about an alliance. We're talking here about a relationship. So typically, we're not talking about a specific opportunity. The relationship produces the opportunities. So it's not a single opportunity. It's building a healthy, efficient, and effective relationship which produces the opportunities. So because of that, what we're looking for is a vision for the alliance relationship, something which is more than just an individual opportunity itself. It's a vision which everybody connected or concerned with the alliance can strive towards. Now, typically that vision would be relatively specific and it would be time-based. I'm sure you've heard of the acronym SMART: specific, measurable, accountable, realistic, and to a timescale. So you would typically have a vision statement that would say something like to increase the market share in the specific area that we're working together in the UK or in Benelux or in the Nordics by 20% within the next 18 months. That would be a reasonable visionary statement. Mm-hmm. Within the vision document, we would call the vision document a memorandum of understanding and principles, because it seems to describe what its purpose is. It's not a legally binding document. It's not a contract that we're asking people to sign. It's an advisory document. It's a document which gives clarity to the relationship, provides coherence. So you'll see as we go through, we'll be talking about such things as the vision itself, the joint business value propositions used to deliver on the vision, the key stakeholders who are involved in each of those joint business value propositions, the governance model, how we control it, manage it as we go through, the metrics, what are we going to measure, the relationship change management, the individual marketing activities, etc., etc., etc. But hopefully each of those things I've just mentioned will be a single paragraph. So it's a fairly compressed document. It can either be a series of PowerPoint slides, or it can be a Word document. And I've got lots of examples that I can send you, or you can download from the website as examples that you can use to build your own. The name MOUP, there is nothing magical about that. If you prefer to call it your Alliance Charter, for example, absolutely fine. No problem with that. Some people have even called it the way we do business around here. Absolutely fine. Whatever phraseology works best for you in your organization is absolutely fine. But the prime purpose of it, the significant purpose of it, is to provide clarity for both all parties who are involved in the particular alliance relationship that you are involved in. So this is what we're going to be talking about. Establishing the value of an alliance vision, conducting the pre-workshop planning. I talk about the way to deliver this document, this MOUP. I talk about it as a workshop, as a single workshop. And to be fair, that's a hangover from pre-COVID and pre-lockdown days, where typically we would hold a single face-to-face workshop involving the partners on both sides. With COVID and with lockdown, what people have come to realize is that within reasonable boundaries, you can actually achieve this document through a series of online webinars, workshop webinars. It's not quite the same thing. And if you have the opportunity, I would always go for a face-to-face meeting, because it's richer, there's more context, there's more interaction between all the parties. But you can do it as a series of online webinar workshops. So you've got a number of stages. You've got the pre-workshop planning, which we'll go through and I'll explain to you what that's all about. There's the actual running of the workshop itself, whether it's a single event or a number of connected events. There's then documenting the output, how you do that and what the process for that is. And then finally constructing the MOUP and getting that validated by the key stakeholders that you've identified, probably in stage 1. And then, as with most of these stages, there's a go, no-go action. There's an action that says, right, we've produced the MOUP, that's our vision. Are we all happy with it? Can we move to the next stage? And of course, the next stage, stage 3, which is in 2 weeks' time, the next training session will be, how do we get from stage 1 to stage 2? What's the action plan? How do we construct that action plan to identify the key things in the visioning document? So I hope that makes sense. That's just, again, a schematic showing you the VST overview. We've dealt with stage 1, which is the benchmarking. Where are we now? We're now looking at stage 2, the visioning. Where could we be, or where should we be? And this is just a simple, more linear explanation of what's in each stage, what the purpose and key tasks and objectives are in each of these stages. So just before we get on to the MOUP and the document itself and how you put this together, when you get to stage 2, you actually have broadly two ways of approaching this. One way is to follow the scripted VST process. And if you follow the VST process, when you've completed the training, you'll see all the steps and all the tasks and activities. That's a prescriptive process that takes you through a series of actions that you need to complete the VST process itself, which by definition will produce the MOUP. That's fine. The other way that you can do it is by using what I would call a pick and mix type approach. Now, by that, what I mean is you've done stage 1 and you've produced your report. And that report identifies the strengths and weaknesses currently in the alliance relationship. We would call them enablers and inhibitors. So what you could do is you could produce a document, or you could conceivably go straight to stage 3, which is to say, we want a better relationship. So we're going to pick off the lesser scoring things from stage 1, and we're going to decide which ones we're going to address and in what priority order. So there are two ways of doing this. And I don't think there's any particular best way or right way. Most people find it easier to follow the VST because it's more logical. Also, I would suggest that it takes a relative degree of alliance maturity and professionalism, experience on the part of the alliance manager to be able to follow the pick and mix approach, because you're having to use your own personal judgment as to which are high impactor activities, which are low impactor activities, which are revenue generating, which are relationship building. So there's quite a degree of well, there's some degree of sophistication if you're going to use the pick and mix approach. Okay, so what is an MOUP? So the acronym stands for Memorandum of Understanding and Principles. Straight away, can I say that many organizations already have the concept of MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. And in those organizations, an MOU is a legal document which needs to be signed, vetted, and validated by the legal department. If that's the case, don't call it an MOU, because you don't want the momentum that you're building with this relationship to be slowed down by a contracts or a purchasing or a legal department that will agonize over each phrase or each thing. It's not a legally binding document. It's an advisory document. So for a potential new alliance where there's no alliance there currently, it helps because it allows both sides to articulate what the relationship might be quite quickly. for an already existing alliance relationship where there's no MOUP, it allows a reset or a refresh, a re-examination of what are we trying to do here. And it's a very interesting exercise because very often, even though you feel that the intention and the activities and the aspirations and the goals of the alliance are very, very clear to both sides, it's only when you ask the other side to articulate what those are, and you hear things which are completely different to what your goals and aspirations are, that you start to realize that unless it's written down, there is quite a degree of misperception possible on both sides of the alliance relationship. One of the most powerful things about the MOUP, although one of the most mundane, is that you actually write it down. You actually write a document and say, this encapsulates our joint vision for this relationship. It includes things like the scope, the scale, our intentions, our ambition, our aspirations, who are the key stakeholders on both sides that need to be involved, what are we going to be selling, what's the outline go-to-market model. Yes, there'll be more detail in stage 3, your actual action plan, but this document gives you a coherent, well, it's difficult to think of another word other than vision, a coherent vision for the alliance relationship. Yes,
Mike,
Ralph.
just, yeah, thanks. A quick question. When you say outline go-to-market model, how high level is that? Is that a paragraph or
yes,
a side of A4?
Typically, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a very good point that you raise, because I've been asked a number of times, and I'm sure if you're running a VST exercise, you'll be asked the same thing. People will say, well, why do we need a visioning stage and an execution go-to-market stage? Let's just jump to the execution. And my answer is always, the vision on the vision stage gives you your aspirations and your direction, but it may be 2 quite different groups of people responsible for each particular aspect. So you may have some quite senior people in the MOUP visioning workshop, but they won't actually do the work. That's not their job. Then you'll have some execution people or some operational people, I would call it, in the stage 3 go-to-market stage. And what you don't want is the stage 3 people negating or denying the vision that you've already created. You don't want them saying, well, we don't like that vision, we'd like a different vision. That's not their job in this process. Their job is to execute that vision. But equally, on the reverse of that, the senior people may make certain statements about the types of joint products and services that will be sold in certain geographies, or the aspirations in certain geographies, which are wildly out of sync with reality on the ground, if I can put it that way. So you do want the operational people in stage 3 to be able to challenge some of the targets that have been set within the stage of MOUP. So yes, when I say an outline go-to-market, I mean a statement that says we're going to go for these particular industries, I don't know, finance, manufacturing, forestry and mining, whatever it is. And we're going to do that in the following geos. And then when it goes down to the stage 3, the operational people, they look at that paragraph and say, well, actually, we need to break that apart, because what we really need are some joint accounts that we can attack with this, or not attack, we can service with these offerings. So they will then go to a level of greater detail, talking about the particular companies involved and the presence that each party has in those companies, and who will lead, who will follow, etc.
Yeah, that was my question. Who will lead, who will follow?
Yeah, so you'll have more detail in stage 3, definitely. Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem.
Another quick question, Mike,
Sure.
because I've been, especially, working with the GSIs, you see a lot of differences across, I don't know, Deloitte versus Accenture versus Capgemini. And many times you hear like the differences in business models or earning models. And what we do, for instance, particularly in this organization, there are all kinds of tools on how to kind of monitor, manage all the way from the vision to execution. What would be a smart approach to creating, this vision, let's say this kind of declaration? I would say, regardless of all these tools, whether it's called outcome-based enablement, whether it's called, I don't know, business plan, is there a way to, create a certain need for this? Many people feel like, going for the vision is not as relevant as defining those, like making the account mapping, for instance, or identifying stakeholders and doing executive layering. So sometimes, this vision is kind of pushed away, but at the same time, you hear these kind of business models that we have completely different business models, and it is the job of the channel sometimes to synchronize these different rhythms. So maybe you can share your wisdom in this area.
So first of all, I would say you're quite right. Different organizations have different ways of making the transition from strategy to execution, or from vision to operations, however you wish to phrase it. That's fine. This system or this approach can accommodate that. So however however your partner wants to use a particular approach to have a document which converts some high-level statements of intent to some lower-level statements of action that support that intent, I'm fine with that. That's absolutely fine. So this approach, this VST approach, is agnostic in that sense. It doesn't favor one particular approach or another. We're not dictating that you should have to do it one way or another. Far more important point is the point that you raise secondly, which is individuals who will denigrate or will dismiss the importance of a vision within the alliance relationship. When that happens, I think you simply need to remind them that we're talking here about a strategic alliance. We're not talking about a resale relationship. We're not talking about a distributor relationship. Now, I have no problem with the idea that a strategic alliance should deliver early results. It should. But if we're not careful, the relationship becomes a collection of opportunities with no vision. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We don't want to be in a transactional mode continuously. We want to be in a strategic mode. We want to be able to show our respective senior leadership teams in both organizations, or in all organizations connected with the alliance relationship. We want to show them some relationship growth. Now, relationship growth can be viewed in two ways. One is the amount of revenue that's being generated and growing. That's fine. But also the relationship growth in terms of the degree of trust which is developing, the connection between senior executives on both sides, the systematization of the alliance relationship, so that previously successful joint business value propositions can be recycled in different geographies. So all of this adds up to the fact that what we're looking for is a document at a higher level which articulates the overall aspirations of this relationship and defines quite clearly the scope as a very important aspect. Is it this country? Is it that country? Is it a combination of countries? Is it EMEA? Is it global? Is it LATAM? Is it, Asia Pac? Whatever. So you need them both. Otherwise, you will be stuck in the transactional, opportunistic loop. And the danger with that is that if it's transactional, then at some point, people are going to get adversarial about the way they negotiate around costs and price. And they're going to say, well, we could use you, but we can use another partner. So you have to lower your price. That's not what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to achieve a healthy, efficient, and effective alliance relationship. No problem, Raf. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
So It's not legally binding. It's a simple framework. There's nothing magical about the term. If you choose to use a different term like charter or whatever, please feel free. Many organizations do have aspects of what's in an MOUP in different parts. So they'll have an enterprise agreement, for example, or they'll have a business plan, or they'll have a low-level action plan in different countries. The beauty of having an MOUP in a single document is that there's a single version of the truth. Everybody can see that both sides have signed off on this as the high-level plan or the high-level vision for the relationship.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. This is again just an explanation on this slide of some of the typical CSF. You remember we talked in stage 1 about the common success factors, yeah? So some of these are obviously, well, all of these are common success factors. If you achieve these things with your alliance relationship, then your alliance is going to be performing better. So vision, clarification of strategic intent, joint business value propositions, internal alignment, governance, business to business alignment, communication, identification of key stakeholders. Each of these things will be a heading in the MOUP document, and you have a paragraph that describes this particular thing. So how is the MOUP developed and produced? So we have 3 stages. First of all, before the workshop. Before the workshop, you can send the attendees to the workshop a pre-workshop briefing pack. And that briefing pack will have in it a briefing sheet, a single PDF sheet, which describes what an MOUP is, what it's typically used for, why it's valuable. You'll then have a slightly longer PowerPoint slide deck that describes in more detail the process they're going to go through, what other people have said that have attended MOUPs. And then finally, you'll have an MOUP questionnaire. So one of the things that you can do is you can create before the workshop what I would call a straw man. Do you know what I mean by a straw man? You're familiar with the phrase? Good. So a straw man is a theoretical first attempt to create the document. It may not be entirely accurate, but it's something that's put in place. So the way you would do that is you would send the questionnaire out to all the workshop attendees, and you'd say, we want to make the best use of time at the workshop itself. So if you feel we've already answered these questions and you feel there is an answer to these questions, please fill it in and we'll incorporate that within our discussions at the workshop. So for example, if they feel there is already a vision statement, well, can you please tell us what it is? What you'll discover, and what is slightly humorous but also valuable about that, is that you may find you get to the workshop and you've got 5 or 6 different vision statements. And it just shows that people have got a different perception of what this relationship is there to achieve. But by encapsulating all of those visioning statements into a single vision statement, you're creating consensus, you're creating alignment of all the different perspectives. So the briefing pack, you can send them for you. And of course, the briefing pack you can download from the Alliance Best Practice website. If you can't find it, I'll send it to you. The pre-workshop questionnaire you can send out, and it can be completed by all the attendees. So before the purpose of the pre-workshop work is to ensure that when people attend the workshop, they're fully briefed on what the exercise is there to achieve. They know it's valuable, they know it's important, and so they can get working straight away at the workshop itself. So at the workshop, you'll run the workshop to a predefined agenda, and the agenda will reflect the headings that you're going to have in your MOUP document. I'll show you an agenda in a second. And then after the workshop, so during the workshop, you'll be provoking and prompting discussion. So you'll be saying, for example, joint business value proposition. What is our joint business value proposition? What are we selling? And then people will tell you, and you'll make notes on a whiteboard, on a flip chart. You'll collate the information. After the workshop, you'll take all those notes that you've created at the workshop and you'll combine them into a single document. And then you'll send that document around to all the attendees as version 1. You will maintain version control. So you'll ask everybody to send the amendments and changes to you. When those changes come in, you will log them in the version control section of the MOUP, and you'll detail the need for the change, and then you'll resend out the changed, updated MOUP to all the attendees, and then the cycle goes through again. So typically, after an MOUP workshop, you may get 3 or 4 versions over the course of a 2, 3, or 4 week period.
I was just about to ask, like, how long is this process going to take? But okay,
you don't want it to be too long. You don't want to allow it to drag on too long, because you want to get to stage 3, which is the action planning. You want to have a strong vision, but you want to get to stage 3, which is the action planning. So normally you would perform an action which is sometimes called guillotining, which means you give them a cutoff time and you say, we need all the feedback within 2 weeks of the end of the MOUP. Now, obviously, that puts some pressure on yourself to be able to recycle any changes that come in and send them out quickly. But it should be a reasonably short period of time. 2 weeks is usually more than enough time.
Yeah, okay. Another question, because I also see sometimes, like, you have very nice, let's say, documents or plans or everything, but when it comes to this RASI, who's responsible, who's accountable, who needs to be informed, if that is not clearly defined up front, it's like there's one person who normally does everything and covers up for the others, and then everything is kind of fuzzy. So do you have like a methodology where you probably assign this kind of RASI to the... Okay.
Yes. So that happens in stage 3.
Okay, stage 3. Okay.
And the methodology that I use is the methodology which I feel you were referring to, which is the RACI or the RACI methodology. Responsible, accountable, consulted, and informed. So the way it works is the discussion piece is stage 2, a vision is created, and then in stage 3, a group of individuals who may be the same but could be different work out what actions do we need to take to achieve the vision which has been created in stage 2. And then when the actions have all been agreed, then you create the RACI or the RACI chart, which says who's going to be responsible for it, who's going to actually do it, who's going to be consulted. And exactly as you described, that in itself is a very useful exercise because it shows up overburdening certain individuals, or it shows up how certain individuals will not be able to do so many things. It's a very, very useful tool. Okay, so this is just a very simple process overview, step by step, of what you have to do to produce the MOUP document. So each step has an activity, and as you can see, you step through it. So at the end of it, step 5, you've got an agreed MOUP. I'll leave you to read through that yourself. It just basically articulates what I've been saying previously. Here you've got a slide which shows some example comments from people who have been involved in an MOUP before. You'd use these, you'd send these out to your attendees to show them that there is value in doing this thing, and give them some understanding of what can be achieved. And that understanding is usually based on communication, clarity, and commitment. So the document makes things clearer. It makes it easier for people to understand what they're committing to, and it gives you general alignment and consensus through the communication of the document. So here is a typical agenda for the MOUP. You don't have to have every single one of these things in the document if you don't wish, but I would suggest that you would want the majority of these things. So if I just quickly run down the list, joint business value proposition is essential. I would usually start with vision. It's slightly in the wrong order here. I would normally start with a vision statement, then a business value proposition, then some key stakeholders, then the key metrics, then the alliance reward system. The market fit of the proposed solutions, you could possibly do that in stage 3. The mutual needs, again, you could possibly do that in stage 3. Governance, I think you need to do at this stage. Internal alignment, I think you need to do at this stage. Key stakeholders we've talked about, scope we've talked about. Business to business strategic alignment is important, I think. The relationship plan, that refers to, that's like a holding paragraph which articulates how you're going to grow the relationship over time. But you could deal with that in a later stage. I think that's stage 6 of the VST process. We're going into more detail about the relationship plan in stage 6. And then relationship change management. That's a deceptively important one, because the one thing we know, of course, is that change is constant. So the only thing we can say about the MOUP when we've created it is that it will change. And so you should have a process for how those changes will be communicated. And typically it's very, very simple. Any changes get communicated to you as the alliance manager, and you recirculate any changes to the MOUP to all the interested parties, all the key stakeholders.
Yeah, a challenge to you, probably you are familiar with this or you've heard it. If you're looking at the Salesforce ecosystem, there is quite a change like every fiscal where accounts are being swapped across sales teams. So, you know, the relationship, okay, at the senior exec or executive level, the people tend to stay the same, but more operationally, and where, let's say, revenue is being created and protected and stuff like that, there is a lot of change in who owns what and the relationship. If that is, let's say, a constant factor, could that be also kind of brought in here just to make sure that there is some sort of an underlying stable fundament,
yes,
regardless of the sales teams taking over accounts and things like that? Because
yes,
okay.
Yeah. I mean, if we put this simply, I understand the need and the desire that organizations have to be flexible and responsive to the markets that they serve. I understand that. But if it becomes excessive, and if you're making a lot of changes on a quarterly basis, then it's very, very hard for the teams on both sides to actually concentrate on the actual work to get the revenue in, because they're spending all their time re-establishing relationships with new people on the team. So there is a balance here, and it's a balance that each organization has to find for themselves. But in the relationship change management section, I think you can allude to that, you can refer to that, and you can make a rule which says that you will only change up to 10 or 20% of the personnel in the alliance relationship before you start to affect the alliance performance. One of the roles of the MOUP is as a kind of a rule book for the alliance relationship. So it's kind of like your armor as an alliance professional, because as an alliance professional, you'll go into a meeting, lots of nice things will be said, lots of good intentions will be articulated, and then later people won't do them, or they'll act inappropriately, or they'll say things which they shouldn't be saying. The MOUP acts as your document that you can use to hold them to account. That is not what we agreed. And you'll see as we talk about the sign-off procedure, the MOUP, the stage 2 document, whether it be called an MOUP or a charter or whatever, it's signed off by the executive sponsor on both sides. So there's a high level, a very high level and a very powerful level of validation towards that particular set of goals and rules. It is a governance model. And if people break the governance, if they act inappropriately, then it's perfectly allowable for you as the alliance manager to invoke some action from your executive sponsors to stop that happening. So in that case, it would be too much change. I would call too much change churn, meaning that individuals are being swapped in and out with such speed and with such regularity that the alliance itself is affected, is adversely affected.
Yeah, this is also a question of like business continuity and how you can, because okay, the channel is one sales channel. You can have all kind of other channels to get revenue, but and also for our organization, like I'm talking now like broader sales force, this is also prioritized to create this kind of multiplier effect where you're also scaling up your business to kind of create a mirroring of your internal sales organization with that of the partners. But we have here different maturity levels where if also internally, but also externally, and this needs to be brought again more at the strategic selling with the partners. And there you don't have 20 partners, you have maybe 5 or, so that's also some sort of an exercise that we are kind of getting forward with. Another thing on the go-to-market, for instance, with MuleSoft, unlike Salesforce broader, there was a verticalization motion started last year, so quite incipient, quite early stages. And there is also a push towards what we call better together with Salesforce, because after 5 years of acquisition, MuleSoft is still like 3% of attach into Salesforce accounts, and it's very interesting for partners in both ecosystems to kind of benefit from accounts, but I think more interesting for the MuleSoft partners to get embedded into Salesforce. So this is also kind of an rotation that is happening now and an integration, but it can be quite complex. And the challenge that I've been facing, I'm here for like 1.5 years, and I've been working in different kind of like partner alliances, and this is the most complex way of setting up both the channel business operations and everything, and also the partner program as such. But this is going to be more standardized as of the new fiscal. So this framework really helps me in also creating some sort of priorities and what needs to happen. And probably this like the full-blown, very mature model. But I need to also use some of those elements to make sure that I, keep all the plates in the air, that I can easily, prioritize and move certain key partners per verticals, and I have joint assets with them and joint offerings and, aligned to accounts.
Yeah, what you're referring to there is your partner segmentation policy. So you should have within Salesforce the large ecosystem, you should have a triangle or a pyramid of partners. And that pyramid will have various levels in it. And the levels will indicate how much effort and intensity and dedication of resource is involved in each level. And so, of course, at the bottom level that I would call transactional, you would have very little dedicated resource. One person in Salesforce could manage 20 or 30 transactional partners because those partners are simply reselling Salesforce software or reusing Salesforce software. It's a buy from, sell to transactional relationship. Then you've got a level above that, which is enhanced, which is where partners are taking the core Salesforce offerings and they're creating new products, new services, new joint offerings. Now you need more energy, you need more effort, you need more knowledge. So you get a little bit more attention. And then above that, you've got what I would call collaborative, which is where certain partners have worked together with Salesforce in a particular product line, but now they'd like to do it in multiple product lines. So they want to engage more fully with Salesforce. And then finally, you've got the top tier, which is full, all singing, all dancing, shared risk, shared reward, partnership. So you have 4 levels, TECP. Now, this process is designed for the top 2 levels. It's not designed for levels 3 and 4, the bottom 2 levels. So that's how you would make the distinction between what I would call a channel strategy, a reseller strategy, and a strategic alliance strategy.
Still also in the Salesforce ecosystem, if I just a mental scanning, I think there is one, I'm talking about the Dutch market, there is one partner who has all the multi-clouds, and for the rest you see some have 1, some have 2, but it's still, you know, early days. Okay.
So the next slide 13, is simply illustrating that your MOUP, or your charter, whatever you're calling it, is the high-level advisory document. Now, obviously, with an important alliance relationship, you'll have multiple documents. There could be some legal documents, there could be some strategic documents, there could be some operational documents, some financial ones, and finally some structural ones. But you should put the location of these additional documents in the MOUP. So the MOUP is the place you go to learn about the alliance relationship. And then if you want to go into more detail, either legally or strategically or et cetera, you have a link in that MOUP which takes you to those particular documents. And that's how these are the documents feed into the MOUP. Okay?
Yep.
So conducting the pre-workshop planning is all about deciding which stakeholders should attend and whether you should use a straw man using the questionnaire or not. So your key stakeholders, you'll find some of those from stage 1. So is it going to be just the stage 1 key stakeholders, or is it going to be multiple ones? Running workshops via the webinar or via an online webinar is much harder than face-to-face. So if you can do it face-to-face, it's much better. And obviously send all available briefing documents to attendees. And you may find that actually an online briefing call is necessary to make sure you explain to all the attendees what's going to happen. So that's the pre-workshop planning. At the actual workshop itself, then obviously this is where you use your facilitation skills to be able to draw out information and knowledge from the attendees at the workshop. You'll make notes. Be careful about diving into too much detail, particularly around what I would call pet topics. Certain technology or salespeople have certain areas which they particularly want to talk about. You have a limited period of time, typically in the region. If it's a single meeting, 4 hours. If it's an online meeting, typically 1 or 2 hours. So you have a limited amount of time and you have to get through the agenda. So you shouldn't be afraid to close down conversations that are going too deep. The goal is to set boundaries and expectations on both or all sides of the attendees in the room so that everybody knows what to expect. Everybody knows what the rules of the meeting are. And the alliance sponsors should be present, or at least should introduce the workshop. They should be present for some period of time. So you would typically start the workshop by having a statement from each alliance sponsor. Typically, they'll say how important this workshop is, why they're doing it, and the fact that they give it their full support. We've talked about documenting the output. Obviously, you you'll never get all the key stakeholders, every single last key stakeholder that you want to attending. There'll always be some holidays, there'll always be some sickness, there'll always be some crash on the motorway or some traffic jam that will stop people traveling. There'll be something that prevents certain key people attending. So you need to understand what the quorum is, what's the minimum number of key stakeholders that you will move ahead with. And you also need to circulate the MOUP after the event so that these people who weren't able to attend see the discussions and are able to contribute to it. Here's where you construct the document itself. I would suggest you've got a number of general headings, defining the relationship, developing the offerings, aligning the go-to-market activities, developing the relationship, controlling it, and reporting progress. And these then become the individual paragraphs, the vision, the scope, the joint business value propositions, the key stakeholders. There's a logic, there's a flow to the document, which is normal, which is logical.
A question. I get it that I would be, let's say, the gatekeeper for this, but for efficiency reasons, could I delegate some of these things to people that are maybe, let's say, cross-functional, but are kind of sharing also like, okay,
yeah,
like
you could do.
Sometimes we have like shared KPIs. Channel works very closely with enablement, and there are some things, and also with partner marketing. So just to make sure
they can share the load. I think the only thing I would say is the very first thing you said was that you have overall responsibility. I don't think you can abdicate that overall responsibility. It has to be your responsibility. You are the point of contact, you are the point of knowledge, but certainly you can use whatever resources you have access to. You can delegate to make it a more efficient process to produce better content and a better result, certainly, yeah.
Okay, good.
So validating the MOUP, this is just a simple list of certain people that you might want to be involved. These people, strategic, managerial, and operational in these different areas, the alliance area, the business area, the technology area, the marketing, the sales, and who you would send the MOUP to. And then finally, we get to the go, no-go activity or task. That's simple. It's when you have reached the cutoff guillotine point for the final draft of the MOUP, then you would send it to the exec sponsors on both sides for sign-off. And that would typically be a physical sign-off. They would digitally or actually sign off on the document. Some executive sponsors become nervous at that stage because they're worried that they're committing themselves or their organization to a legally enforceable document. So you need to keep reminding them this is not a contract, it's an advisory document. But the fact that their signature is on it means there is accountability and it shows their support on both sides. This is an example of an actual example. This one is taken from NetApp and Accenture in the UK. I took this example because it was a fairly large alliance relationship. There was a lot of people involved. And as you can see, the process took from March the 15th through to May the 10th. And those were all the steps that we took with the amount of time allocated for each step or stage or action in between.
Question, this is quite a time-consuming process and that needs to happen. What happens in the meantime? So this is anyways being built. If we do it for the first time, can the operations run in a kind of a stable way that opportunities are being discussed? And because otherwise it's like you cannot freeze everything just to have this in place, but you need to make sure that probably it's like a double motion.
Yeah. So you have two things, I think. You have what I would call business as usual.
Yeah.
And then you have incremental business, meaning net new business.
Yeah.
The MOUP is designed to create net new business.
Yeah.
So you have a bedrock or a foundation of the way that the alliance relationship is working now and the business that it's producing. Nothing that we've talked about should interfere with that.
Yep.
But what you're doing is building on top of that an expectation of the additional new business that's going to be created with the new vision, for the relationship. And as you say, once you've created the first one, it's a relatively simple job to tweak or amend that annually. So typically, most major alliance relationships, strategic alliance relationships, there will be a planning session once a year at the beginning of the financial year of one or both parties, where they will reset the targets, they'll rethink the critical activities. That's what this is designed to achieve.
What we do with all the GSIs, we do the QBR, so it's a quarterly check-in. I think it's also the formula for Salesforce. And we have also like cadences that need to have a certain seasonality based on the relationship, alignment, things like that. So there are different, let's say, cadences on top of each other. It's just that, sometimes it can be very complex because with the Salesforce alliances and channel team, you have maybe sometimes a lean and mean model with more people, whereas in a company like MuleSoft, you have like one person or two people, which is like really carrying all this ecosystem. And then you really need to prioritize, and you really need to do, okay, where you generate most revenue and create this kind of strategy. Again, very, very helpful, very helpful. And it also makes it very concrete. Thank you.
No problem. So there's a list of supporting tools for specifically stage one. I'll send these slides to you after this session, and also you'll have the recording if you need to go back to look at the recording again. And these are the things that you can download from the website. I think you've got my details anyway, so that's fine.
Yes.
And that's the end of that.
Yeah, so, 1 minute over time.
So let me stop the recording.
Yes.